We're live. All right. Let me get Dakota in here. How we doing? Oh my gosh, so many people. Hello, come on in. Hey, hey, hey. What
Hey,
up, D?
how's it going, Davis?
That's good.
Man,
Good. I see you went with a classic Pooter Highline Gathering shirt. Good on you.
indeed. You've got year 4?
Nice. I think this is year 3, right?
All right. Yeah, something like that. Well, welcome
What's up,
out,
man?
everybody.
Can they? Yeah. Are we coming through okay? Can everyone hear us? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
All right, we're taking it as a go.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Great.
How you feeling, D?
Davis, I'm
I'm
feeling really
nervous for
good.
this, man. I feel like I'm about to send a 100-meter high line or something.
Well, let's go ahead and start off. Let's tell people a little bit about who we are, why we're here.
Cool. I'll start. My name is Davis. I'm a producer at Breathe Fest. I've been all 6 years. I I live it. I breathe it. I eat it. It's my favorite thing. Um, Go ahead, D.
Yep, my name is Dakota Collins. I've been with Breathe since its inception. Um, every day Breathe brings an amazing amount of value into my life, and I couldn't imagine a life without Breathe. And, just happy to be here. Davis and I, we've been friends for, holy cow, almost over 20 years now. So our roots go really deep, and Breathe is essentially everything our friendship stands for. And I'm really fortunate just to be in the position we are today, to have such a great, strong bond. And especially in times like this, really fortunate to have these true connections with people. And if you're a part of the Breathe community, I think you know exactly what we're talking about. Um, the the community is so strong, and the relationships we build, it means everything to us. And if you're new to the Breathe community and you're just joining in, well, it's here for you for life now. And Davis, you want to tell people a little bit, just a quick little overview of what Breathe is, and then we can talk about what the Breathe Pulse is, and then we'll go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, good plan. So at its core, Breathe is a slackline festival. We do all sorts of movement practices, workshops, water lines, group discussions, all sorts of stuff. It happens once a year in July. But that was just the first year. I feel like 6-7 years in now, it's developed into something so much more. And man, I'm just like really thankful to have this huge family we have now. And man, we've really transformed it into like a community I could have never imagined. So yeah, this is a Breathe pulse, and pulses can take shape and form in lots of different ways. They can happen online, in person, and really it's just a way for our community to interact with one another and to either share knowledge or skills, or like tonight we're sharing just stories. And so yeah, this is a Breathe Pulse. We're on Instagram Live tonight, but we can have these anywhere: Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, the local park.
Excellent, excellent.
I wanted to
Well, cool.
do real quick before we get super into anything. I thought it would be cool to just like have like a little gratitude practice. And so I'll share something I'm grateful for. D, you can share something you're grateful for today. And then everyone in the chat can type in something they're grateful for. I'll start. I'm thankful for my husky Gigi.
Oh, I am thankful for my Huskies, Junie and Kovu, and all of the friends and family that I have, and I'm thankful for Breathe. So the the best way for these pulses to happen is the more engagement from the audience, the better. So let's hear what everybody's thankful for. And throughout this entire session tonight, feel free to throw in comments, questions you want for us to answer, and we'll be happy to give those the attention they deserve.
Cool.
All right,
Excited.
Jill, we're thankful for you too. Oh yeah, yep, Lauren, I'm
Uh,
thankful for you. We've got Victor. Oh, I love Slacklines as well. So this is going to be
Ronnie.
a great story because um, ultimately Breathe at its roots has a strong connection to slacklining, and ultimately it's part of its inception. So the love that many slackliners have for the sport is composed of you know a balance between wanting to be outside, to find your inner self, to unite the mind and body, and ultimately that's what Breathe is. And so throughout these past 7 years, seeing Breathe develop, what's been consistent is our commitment to slacklining. And Davis and I, we've been in the sport for a long time now. We are all of a sudden some old school cats, and sometimes it's hard to keep up on all the new things in the industry. But we're going to try and make this story as approachable for people that may have never been on a high line, or people that are diehard highliners. So yeah,
Nice. I feel like that's a perfect segue into our kind of first portion of the story, which is Rocky Mountain Slackline and that organization, and kind of the start of that and kind of how that developed. So in 2012, Dakota and I started Rocky Mountain Slackline, and we were just stoked slackliners, and we weren't even trying to make money. We were just trying to like slackline for free, essentially. So like, how can we get gear paid for? How can we travel and slackline at the same time without spending any of our own money? And we saw this like major gap because there was no one teaching slacklining. One-on-ones, corporate events, birthday parties, TED Talks.
you
We did it all. We were open to anything.
you name it, we did a little bit of it all. It's pretty funny looking back now. And the reason why that this is relevant is because some of the unique events or gigs that we scored, I mean, you could never imagine what we've seen. I mean, it's just been crazy. We've done events for Facebook corporate. We've done events where MGMT was a private band singing right behind us. What are some crazy ones, Davis? We've done the Las Vegas Supercross World Cup. We've done some
uh,
crazy stuff, man.
we did some sort of like Tony Robbins-esque inspirational event called Prove It. And their like mantra there was the speaker would go, "Prove it," and everyone would go, "Prove it."
Yep, yep. Oh, yep. Yeah, thanks, Mark, for bringing
String
that up.
cheese incident. Yeah, that
Yep.
was cool.
On New Year's Eve, we had the privilege of rigging a highline over the stage and wearing some Tron suits. Um, so some really, really crazy things, some really cool places that slacklining has brought us. Um, and so this particular trip we're talking about tonight was a Monster Energy Supercross event in Las Vegas. Myself, Davis, we had Julian, Don DeLinger, Sean Kirkpatrick. I think we had Dougie Main out there as well. We did an event, a trick line performance, believe it or not. This was back in 2015 when our bodies were still in pretty good shape and the bones bones are pretty strong. So trick lining, you're bouncing on the line, you're doing flips, you're doing spins, kind of like a trampoline type show. So we packed up Davis's van. I think we had Sean's little Toyota, and we all strolled out there, and yep, Sean, Doug was our MC for the event, and we had a great time. We Davis and I were talking. I didn't even remember that we were planning on going to Yosemite after this event, but I guess we were. So,
Yeah,
Davis, you want to talk about that?
I seem to remember actually at Breathe, I think it was year 2 during D-Rig, Jerry Mizweski from Balance Community was telling Dakota and I like how sick Yosemite was, and that like it was just this like epic stomping ground and like proving ground, and that like we had to go, and that October was like the time. And so it just so happened to line up that we got our expenses paid to make it to Las Vegas. And so essentially what we did at the end of the Monster Energy truck event was we chalked Sean's car packed full of Dougie, Julian, Sean, and all the crash pads for the event in their little Camry. And they went home, and Dakota and I went to Yosemite, which I think was like supposed to be like a 5-hour drive or something, but all these roads were closed down, and so it was like 11 or something like that.
The best part about it was we were trying to be as resourceful as possible with the space in Davis's Sprinter van. So we strapped crash pads on top of Sean Kirkpatrick's Camry and sent him 16 hours across the country with a crash pad that was flapping in the wind. So we still hear that every day. But I remember, we were some young bucks strolling into Yosemite Valley, and oh my gosh, man, this I don't know if anybody's been to Yosemite, go ahead and comment because you might know what we're talking about here. The scale of the rocks is just absolutely mind-boggling. It was just incredible. Seeing El Cap for the first time, it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And Yosemite Falls was in the background and Half Dome. I mean, it just literally felt like you're in the valley of these gods. It was just absolutely incredible. It was so much energy, and man, we were just two schoolboys, as giddy as hell.
Yeah, I remember thinking, like seeing pictures of Yosemite, you like see this big rock, and then there's like some trees at the base of the cliff. And when you're at the base of the cliff looking at these trees, they're like massive freaking trees.
Oh,
And then you look back at the picture and they're like little bushes on the side of the hill next to El Cap.
yeah. Well, see, the funny thing is if you're a highliner and you've never been to Yosemite, there's definitely like beta on like if you want good beta on how to do a highline trip in Yosemite, this is a good thing to be listening in on because we found out the hard way. We really didn't know what the heck, where to camp, where you eat, where you do anything, where you buy groceries. So we kind of figured that out. We had no time crunch, so we were in it for the long haul. But if you guys have heard of Camp 4, we were fortunate to make that a destination. I think that was in the first part of our trip, right? We stayed there for about a week or something. So
Yeah.
Camp 4 is this climber camp, right at the base of these crags, and it's group camping. So you're surrounded by people from all over the world. I ended up leaving Camp 4 with an accent, a little bit of an Australian, British, and Canadian accent, just because you're surrounded by people talking in all sorts of languages. It's hilarious. I think Davis even called me out one night for talking Australian, and there was an Australian guy at the fire, and I didn't even know I was talking like that. But it was just well, how about this? I think we've got a couple more viewers. If you're just tuning in, this is the Breathe Pulse. Davis and I are telling our slackline trip talking about our slackline trip to Yosemite Valley. This story's on friendship and how it's fueled passion for the rest of our lives. Davis, take us into the next chapter here. So we're in Yosemite Valley.
I
We're getting settled into
Yeah,
Camp 4.
I just remember like the overall mentality between you and I was like we were hungry for high lines, and like rest days weren't a thing, and like the only thing on our mind was highlining. It's all we did. If we weren't highlining, we were like prepping for our next high line. And I think one of the first ones we did was Taft Point, because it's like really easily accessible. It's like a mile hike in on flat ground. You just like walk the tagline around, and so there's not like climbing involved or like any like extreme roped work happening to get to the anchors, anything like that. So it's like pretty straightforward. But then you get the line up and you slide your butt out onto the line, and you're like instantly 2,000 feet off the ground, which was
Yes.
insane. And like we didn't have anything near that scale in Colorado. And so like once we got that first taste of it, like I feel like we were unstoppable.
Oh yeah. It took some time to get used to that exposure though. I remember walking up to the cliffside and never really seeing anything that high. I mean, we'd slacklined in Moab previously. We had established a lot of lines here in Colorado, but nothing 2,000 feet up off the deck. So it was just something different. It almost looked fake. And um, I think one specific memory I have about rigging that Taft Point line was we were trying to get everything organized. We just checked into Camp 4. We're waiting in the line to like get our camp spot, and we're talking about that we're highliners. And then all of a sudden, this one guy from behind us in the line says, "You highline? Okay, yes, I come with." And it was Alejandro Salvo from Argentina, and we're like, "All right, that's great," because we were planning on meeting up with Ron Doremus and Simone Chad, but all the highliners, the better. So we ended up getting up to the Taft Point that next morning really early. We rigged the lines, and to get up to Taft Point, it takes a good bit of a drive, like probably a 30-minute drive or something from the valley. And we get the lines rigged, and at the end of the day, we see somebody like pop up over the cliff edge, and it's Alejandro, completely out of breath. He had hiked all the way from the valley up Taft Point to come highline with us, and we're like, dude, what the heck? How did you get up here?
Yeah, I remember like we were supposed to meet him in the parking lot at like 6 a.m. or whatever, and we waited till like 6:15 and then left, and like kind of like forgot about him, and then at the end of the day, he just shows up.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, it was cool because
What a ride.
when you're in Yosemite and you're focused on highlines, like you've got what I call the highline ears. So you're at camp and you're listening to kind of all the conversations in the background, and you hear one word like slackline or highline, and you kind of perk up. And so we built some friendships right off the bat. Like Tomas. I'm not sure if he's joining in tonight, but we met Tomas and Alejandro. Um, Fede from Argentina. Those were some of just the people that we met. So it was really cool, just like this large friend group of people that we had never really known, but just because we slacklined, we were in it together. So for those next couple of weeks, we were feeding off of each other's energy. They would go rig a project, and it may have been that we were doing a different project that day. Then we'd swap beta, and then we'd go do that line because they knew the beta and what type of anchors you needed, or what type of what length of rope or whatever it was. But that was really cool. So we developed some great friendships right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah. A big thing in that trip was just like
Davis.
the whole like just the characters that we met during that trip were it was crazy. And like it felt like we were like outnumbered as Americans. Like it was just a bunch of European people and Argentinians all slacklining, and we just had such a kick out of like their dialect, and like just their like general vernacular. One guy that came to mind was this guy that like, he was like obviously at Camp 4 by himself, and like every day was just like climbing with a new partner. And we had a fire going one night, and he came by with his potato and his tinfoil and was like, "Can I put my potato in your fire?" And we're like, "Sure, man." Like, no problem. And he like buries his potato in our fire. Like 3 hours later, the guy comes back and digs his potato out of the earth, and it was like, "Oh, perfect." And then like we never see the guy again.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you know, if I just kind of want to give a little bit of an idea on what this trip was based around to the audience here. And at the time, Davis and I, we were really committed highliners, slackliners. We were in the sport. At the time, I mean, we were pretty much making a living off of it. We weren't bringing home bucks, but we were pretty much living slackline. And I would say it was probably the prime of our careers in the slackline realm. And we go out there and we've just got so much determination. We wanted to check off every classic line. We wanted to do the Lost Arrow Spire. We wanted to do Taft Point. We wanted to do Yosemite Falls. We wanted to do the Rostrum. We wanted to do all the classics. And in order to do some of these lines, you had to have a good team. And the cool thing about Yosemite, kind of what we're talking about, is in the camps, you meet these slackliners who bring a lot of vast knowledge and skills from all over the world, and you come together to make these projects come to life. So a lot of the times it was just, the night before, seeing who was available, seeing what gear we had, and then let's go and project in the morning. And I mean, Davis and I, we were rigging highlines every day. We say that there's being in shape, and then there's being in Yosemite shape, and we were in Yosemite shape, and no way am I near that anymore. But we were pretty much inhaling pasta at night, trying to eat as many carbs as we could, because the next day we were burning who knows how many calories, because we were hiking with huge bags. This was back in the slackline game where you're still using steel to connect to bolts, and you're using fat shackles, and we were using backup ropes for our highline rigs. And if it was 100-foot highline, we still were using 300 or 400-foot pieces of webbing, just because it was just the old school way to do it. And so we were using
big old pulley system, pulleys with 11 mil static rope and an eddy.
Yeah, and so for a lot of you slackliners out there, now the name of the game is try and walk them loose. And at that time, I mean, the name of the game was crank it as tight as you possibly can. But that trip was a little bit different. I think we were kind of on the cutting edge of experimenting around with different backups, the different tensions. And we were honestly some of the first people to start saying sag is swag. And, we started rigging the lines a little bit looser. And that was kind of the first trip for us where we started experimenting with that. So it's pretty interesting. And, I still
we were
like
known
to
as the Loose Boys.
Yeah.
We were known as the boys who rigged at loose, and we were rigging, for the slackliners listening, we were rigging at like maybe 1,000 pounds force. Like, they were tight, but like we thought we were cool because we were the Loose Boys.
Yeah. Well, I know we've got Mark McKee. He's still using steel. He understands what we're talking about. You got to crank those lines. So,
if you're just tuning in, this is a Breathe Pulse. I'm seeing a lot of new names come in. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Davis. That's Dakota. We are just chatting about a trip to Yosemite Valley. Thank you for being here. If you didn't hear this question at the beginning, everyone's homework assignment is to type in the chat something they're grateful for today. Both Dakota and I both said our Huskies. So we rigged Taft Point.
We love comments too. Give us comments. Give us questions if you want to hear something.
Ask us questions.
Yeah.
What did we rig after Taft Point, D? Did we go right to Yosemite Falls?
I think Taft Point we rigged the smaller lines one day. Then the next day we came back and I think we rigged the longer one, the 170 footer at Taft Point, which is probably one of the best lines in the world. I can't think of many lines where you're that high up off the deck with just such an aesthetic view of El Cap in the background. Just absolutely incredible. But then I think after that, we were ready for a little bit more adventure. We wanted to do some hiking. So I think we started rallying a crew for Lost Arrow Spire. Is that right?
That is right.
Yeah. So for the people that don't know, it's an iconic spire Yosemite, this huge finger that overlooks the valley, thousands of feet up off the ground. And it was originally it was the very first highline ever walked back in the day. And it was just something that was on my bucket list. I think it was only a 50 or 60-foot line, but, we had to walk it. And at the time, Davis and I, we could trad climb, but we didn't know anything about aid climbing. We had all the gear. We had a ton of static rope. We had all the highline gear, but we really didn't know what it was going to take in order to get that project up. So what we did was we put a bulletin or a little note on the bulletin board, and we said, hey, we're looking for people that can climb the Lost Arrow Spire because we want to rig the highline. And we found an Australian guy. I can't remember his name, but he volunteered, and he said, hey, I'm going up to climb the Lost Arrow Spire tonight in the middle of the night.
He was training for him and his buddy were training for Nose in a Day. And so if you're not familiar with that, it's a kind of like a iconic route up El Cap, and people try and do it in a day without stopping. And these dudes were like training for that, and so they were like super psyched on it. And it worked out even better because you need a really long rope to do the climb, like longer than a normal climbing rope. And we had that. And so what we did was like we just gave these dudes our rope that we never met before. And we were like, all right, like have fun, see ya. They went that night in the middle of the night, and our plan was to hike up in the morning and just hope that they made it and like left our rope up there for us. And they did. I'm pretty sure we saw their headlamps that night, like up on the spire. And essentially Dakota and I and Ron and whoever else came with us to rig that line, like just walked up there, and it was just like the rope was across the gap to the spire for us. And Dakota had to clip into the rope and just trust that these dudes like connected it properly to the spire and just like hand over hand out there. We never saw those guys after that.
Yeah. It was destiny. I mean, it really worked out because we were looking to rig the line like later in that week when we made that bulletin note, but he was going up that night, so we said, all right, we're just going to go tomorrow. And our plan was we were gonna stay up there for an entire week, and we were gonna rig all the classics. We were gonna rig Yosemite Falls, the smaller one, and the big boy, as well as the Lost Arrow. So Davis and I and our buddy Alejandro, we packed up the gear. I mean, huge packs. We trekked up and we got to the top, and I literally fell over. It was like the heaviest pack ever because we had all of our backpacking gear and food for a week. It was just ridiculous. But oh my gosh, it was such a beautiful sight to see that rope out to the spire. And that rope was out to the spire, and I think we had that line rigged in like 30 minutes. So
yeah, mostly because I was trying to place the cams in this flake. I'm like checking my britches every 5 minutes because I'm like hanging off this cliffside trying to maneuver these cams, into which I was like, I could trad climb, but like not that well. And so I'm placing these cams. All of a sudden over my shoulder, Dakota's heckling me from the spire to hurry up because he's got a poo or something.
Yep. So Davis got that line or that anchor fixed, and we got that line up, and it was just absolutely beautiful. I think we all took it for a quick walk, and then we went to sleep for a bit. And the plan was just to leave the line up for a couple days and session it. And from that point on, man, I mean, we walked that thing in the morning, we walked it in the afternoon. I had the opportunity to walk it in the middle of the night. Um, it was just incredible. We got pretty bad weather while we were up there, and it was just raining nonstop. And then we had a little window, and I went down to the line, and the clouds completely covered the valley, and just the spire was sticking out of these clouds. It was just something unreal. I'd never seen anything quite like it, and it was 100% silent. Nothing could be heard. And I tied in, and I walked that line, and it was perfect. And then, yep, I came back, and Ron Dreamus right there. I decided to feel as free as possible, and I walked that line naked.
Yeah, and gave me the pleasure of recording it on my GoPro. Straight down crotch shot status. So I got to watch that film later. Tune in next week for the raw cut of that. Do you remember, D, the campfire tale of rats at Lost Arrow Spire?
No.
One night, prior to us rigging that, we heard like a tale of people leaving that line rigged up overnight and coming back in the morning, and rats had like chewed through the slings of their cams. You don't remember that?
Oh, yes, I do.
And so we were all nervous about rats eating our rig. And that was like a concern with you walking in at night. And I remember that you made sure to bring a headlamp and like check to see if the rats had eaten our rig or not.
Yes, absolutely. Because that was the thing, is if you were going to walk the High Line at night, you needed to do it in the pitch black. And so our buddy Alejandro, he did it first. And he said, I'm going to only do the mission with no headlamp. Like, you have to walk down there, rappel down to the anchor, no headlamp, tie in, walk it, and then do everything in reverse. And I said, I'm not comfortable with rappelling, like, without checking my stuff in pitch black. Like, I'm going to bring a headlamp. So I brought a headlamp. I made sure I was tied in, and then I turned it off, rappelled down into the darkness, tied in, checked the anchor to make sure the rats didn't eat it, and then turned off the headlamp and just walked it in pitch black. It was amazing. Davis, what was it like walking the Lost Arrow Spire? What was going through your head at that time?
I was pretty scared. I remember the only thing that was like really giving me a sense of safety was like an old rusty rivet bolt that allegedly Dean Potter had placed back in the day. And like you like rig the line off cams, but then you kind of back it up to this bolt, and then the bolt is backed up to a tree like 60 feet up. And so I remember just thinking like, well, if like everything goes south, at least like there's that big burly tree up there. And the Lost Arrow Spire is kind of funny because you're only like 200 feet off the ground, but like the ground that I'm talking about is just like this little notch on the side of the mountain, and then like 15 feet to either side, you're like 2,000 feet off the ground. And so,
yeah,
like, you just feel so exposed, man. And I remember stepping onto the spire and just like having this sense of like all the greats before us, Dean Potter, all those types of people that had like also stepped foot on that spire. And it's like not a big spire. And so you're like, you can just tell that like you're standing right where Dean Potter was standing.
Yes, you're literally standing in the footsteps of the legend.
Exactly. My favorite line that trip was Yosemite Falls 250. Let's talk about that one.
All right, let's talk about that.
Before we get into it,
I see some.
But before you get into it, I see some new people joining. Thank you for coming in. This is a Breathe Pulse. I'm Davis. That's Dakota. We're going to try and have these every week, so come back. And everyone's homework assignment is to post something in the chat they're grateful for today. Oh, and Lauren asks, who is we all? I think for the Spire, it was me, Dakota, and Alejandro. I don't think there was anyone else there for that.
I think you're right. We had some
a little bit of
people
lag
make
on
some
Dakota's
appearances
end.
throughout that week. Sorry about that.
You're good. So the 250, that's the best line I've ever walked in my entire life.
Yep.
You're
that was the
2,400
pinnacle
feet off
of my
the ground.
slackline career.
Yes. You on-sighted, did you not?
Yes.
We rigged it on double spider silk. So for the experienced highliners in the group, we rigged a 250-foot line on cranked Vectrin. No judgment. It was a different era. We thought we were being really safe.
We cranked it. Okay, the Yosemite Falls 250, you are literally 2,500 feet up off the deck. The water is coming, just raging right next to you, and it's all you can hear. The thing about this line that made it so memorable is Davis and I had to rig this thing by ourselves. At the time, like, our friends had gone down to the valley and they were restocking up on food or something. So we were rigging this line by ourselves. And I didn't even know, I was given the static side. And in order to rig the static side, you need to rappel down, like, I don't know, 150 feet or something like that to find these bolts on this nose. Because the high line is literally like this overhanging piece of rock that you're anchored to. And that's what creates such an immense amount of exposure for the line. And so Davis is like, yeah, the bolts are like behind that rock over there. Just rappel down, you'll see them. So I rappel down, and I'm just scared out of my mind. Like, it is one of the scariest rappels you could ever imagine. Everything that you have trust in, like your harness and your gree, you're all of a sudden questioning it. And you're like, do I need 2 harnesses and 2 ropes? Like, how? Like, I don't want anything to fail. And I've got this bag of this slackline gear, and I keep going, and I couldn't find the bolts. So all of a sudden, I'm hanging in midair, 2,500 feet up off the deck, like looking for these bolts, and I can't find them. And I'm yelling across to the other side, and Davis, he's trying to say something and point, but I just couldn't hear him because of the waterfall. And so I'm getting frustrated. I jug all the way back up to try and hear him. He says, no, you got to go like that way a little bit. And I rappel back down, and the same thing happens. So I end up going all the way back up and then coming back down to find the bolts, and they're in a way easier position than I ever thought. So it was a total epic, and I was just totally smoked by this point. And
from
Davis,
my
your side was a
perspective,
little bit, yeah.
From my perspective, looking at you rappelling, I could just like see from your movements that you were like at the verge of tears.
Yes.
Like, it looked miserable over there. My side wasn't so bad. It's like on this big boulder type thing, and the bolts are fashioned in such a way where like you clip the gear to the bolts and then it kind of runs up and over the rock out to the line. And so it was like a little finicky, but like I was definitely more concerned about your side. Like, there was definitely a point in time when I was like, I'm not sure this is going to go.
Yeah, I remember
And
that,
yeah,
man.
like you said, there was no communication between us. Like, there was just hand signals and like pointing and like me just kind of being helpless, and you just like not knowing where to go, and me just like looking. I see the bolts, but I can't tell you how to get there.
Yeah. But once we found the bolts, I mean, these huge bomber glue-ins, like 50 kilonewton bolts, just absolutely bomber. We get this picture perfect rig up. It's 2 tension pieces of Vectrin spider silk, and it's just perfect. It looks absolutely perfect. And we had the extension prevention between each bolt with pieces of webbing back in the day. It was just a super clean rig. So we took a break, and we just kind of sat down and looked, and the Highline was just so beautiful, and I just remember soaking it in, and was completely content without even walking. And what's tonight's theme is friendship, and Davis and I, we've built an incredible relationship over the years, and something that I've always really loved about rigging slacklines with Davis is he's one of the few people that I can actually trust my life in their hands. So what that means is when him and I are rigging slacklines together, if I rig an anchor and I say it's good, Davis is going to trust me, and he can trust his life on that line without looking at it personally. And I feel the same way about him. And so, accomplishing that line without a single word exchanged, it kind of led us into a trend from there on out. We could rig high lines without saying one word to each other. We'd get to a gap, and then we could rig it up, and at the end of it, we're like, dude, we didn't say a single word. We could literally just read each other's minds. And so that line really stuck out because there was almost tears just in trying to get it all put together. But once it was up, it was just absolutely it was absolutely beautiful.
Definitely an epic line. The thing about that line is when you get on the line and you're looking at the anchor, a lot of these lines in Yosemite, you're either walking to like the middle of a wall or like the edge of a cliff. And so you're like, your view behind the anchor is usually like flat ground or just like a big wall. But on the Yosemite 250, like you're looking at this little nose thing that's like this, and past it is like Half Dome a mile away. And so like you feel every foot of that 2,400 feet and then some. And
Yeah.
oh man.
Well, and for the people that are joining us tonight that have never been on a high line, um, just to give you some reassurance here, like I am afraid of heights, and that's something that has always existed within my life, and that's why I really love highlining, is because it challenges you to face that fear, and in a circumstance like that, it really is the ultimate test of the mind, where everything you think you know about life is thrown out the window, and all you're focusing on is the line right in front of you, because that's literally all you have. And there's just 2,500 feet of empty air beneath your feet, and you look down and you see these enormous redwood trees, and they look like pieces of gravel, so tiny. And that's kind of that comment Davis made earlier, is like, these trees are huge and they look absolutely tiny. So the scale was just ridiculous. And honestly, the first time I tied into that line and I started walking, it looked fake. It looked like I was in a cartoon. And that is why I was able to walk that line, is because I was in such an interesting place in my mind and in the world, that all of a sudden, like, I had to come over those fears, and it didn't appear scary. It appeared fake. It literally was like I was living in a cartoon. I can't really explain it further than that, but I crossed that line, and probably only like a minute and a half. It just flew by. It was cranked. But what an amazing feeling.
Man, what a time to be alive. And not so fun fact, those lines actually can't be rigged anymore, at least right now. The Park Service has put an indefinite ban on those lines. Any slack lines over water in Yosemite can't be rigged anymore. And like, it happened not too long after we rigged it, and so like we kind of squeaked in this end.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really, just a good reminder for us all out there is, let's be responsible with the sport, and we have to be positive advocates within the sport to keep access available to all of us to rig these amazing lines. And it takes conversation, and it takes professionalism, and it takes facts and meetings with representatives of national parks, and local municipalities to really, to allow slacklining in a lot of places. So it's really up to all of us to make sure that, slacklining can be seen in a good light, and that, all these amazing places, can continue to be open for us to experience slacklining.
How many slackliners do we have in the chat? Raise your hand in the comments if you're a slackliner. Lauren asked, why did they do the indefinite ban? I think it was just because it was like a really high traffic line, and it was getting rigged every weekend because it's like the dopest line in the U.S. And like tourists started to complain, and there was like an incident with the Secret Service and some highliners, and this like whole debacle happened, and they ended up just like pulling the plug on some of the lines in Yosemite. Whoa,
Yeah.
lots of hands in chat. Sup, slackers.
Hey, slackers. Very nice. Very nice. Well, even if you're not a slacker, that's cool, because what Breathe is all about is what slacklining brings inside of us. The feelings, the connection to Mother Earth, the being unified between mind and body. So, yep. If you don't
Thanks,
slackline, you
Obama.
still are part of the slack life.
Yes.
Nice. All right. What should we tell them next about Yosemite?
If you're just coming in, what's up? This is a Breathe Pulse. I'm Davis. That's Dakota. I feel like a broken record at this point. Come on in. Get comfortable. Thanks for being here. I don't know. What else happened in Yosemite, D?
Ooh, let's talk about Alejandro, man, and the food.
And the magic pen. Oh, and the food. We have, it's so funny. Like, we spent like a week with this guy. Dakota and I probably have 20 inside jokes about Alejandro. He's such a character. At the time, though, like, it wasn't all laughs. And what Dakota's saying about the food was kind of a funny story. And so we had this like 5-day, I'll call it an expedition planned, where we were going to rig the Yosemite Falls line we just talked about and the Lost Arrow Spire in one go, because they're like pretty close to each other. It's like a 5-mile hike up there. We like get backcountry permits and bear cans and all this kind of stuff. And we're going to spend 5 or 6 days up there and rig the lines back to back. And so like Dakota and I like plan our meals like down to each meal, and we bring water filters and all this stuff. And like we had already kind of gotten the general intuition that Alejandro was a bit of a mini the moocher. And so we were like, yo, Alejandro, like, if you're coming, man, like, you need to bring your own food and stuff, or you need to, like, buy food with us, because, like, we're, like, on top of our stuff. We've got everything planned. He's, oh, no problem, man. I'll eat tomato sauce and noodles all week. It's fine. No problem. We bring one rope. No problems. And so we're like, okay, man, like, don't be eating our food. Oh, it's fine. No problems. Okay. And so, sure enough, we get up there, and Alejandro is snacking on all of our food that we hiked 3,000 feet up into the air with 50-pound packs on. And then we were, because the Yosemite Falls line is actually really close to like a tourist viewing spot, and so there's a lot of tourists that comes by, and Alejandro, being this like good-looking Argentinian man, was like chatting up all these girls and like tourists, and he was like, yeah, like we've been up here for 5 days and we have no food, like can I have your food? And they'd be like, oh sure. We'd be like, oh, Alejandro, can we have a bite? Oh, come on, man, this is my food. Like, dude, what's your problem?
Dude. Oh my gosh, what a character. Alejandro, I hope you get to see this video at some point, man. We absolutely love you. We've connected with Alejandro several times since Yosemite, and this dude is an absolute crusher on the Highline. And we watched him ankle leash the the Lost Arrow Spire on site, and that just blew our mind. Like I couldn't believe that.
I
And
forgot
so, I
about
mean, dude,
that.
he's on a different level, and we had just such an amazing time with him. And this is the same guy that hiked up Taft Point from Yosemite Valley. So, I mean, this dude, he went hard in the paint, and he was obsessed with a magic pen, a smoking device, and he kept harassing us for the entire trip. What a
Where's that magic
character,
pen?
man.
Where's that magic pen you have?
Oh man. Oh,
Jackal.
Davis.
Honestly, though, it, like he made all those projects accessible to us. Like he did put in his fair share of like rigging and like carried up a big pack with us, and like definitely made those projects possible. So I don't want to bash on him too much.
No, he was an amazing player to our team that expedition. So shout out to you, Alejandro. Thanks, man. Hey, Grandma.
Hi,
Thanks for joining in,
Grams.
everybody. Oh, all right. Victor asked, did you and I ever have beef on that trip? And I don't think we
No,
did.
no,
No,
we didn't.
we didn't. And that's been, I mean, we've had maybe one or two beefs in our entire life, and that's what's so incredible about our friendship is like we just, man, I don't know how we do it, but we do a really good job at not getting to that point. And
Yeah,
um, yeah, honestly, I think a lot of it comes down to just the trust that we've developed. And, a lot of that trust has been developed from our passion slacklining.
for sure. You're getting heckled in the chat, D.
Oh my goodness. Well, all right, Davis. Should we tell them a little bit about what to what to expect from here on out, or what? You got some more things you want to tell them about?
The only other like sentiment I have that I'd like you to shed a little light on is after our Yosemite trip, we drove back to Colorado, and I remember that we were like, for those people from Fort Collins, we were like Prospect and Shields, and we were like back in Fort Collins, almost home, and like got our first view of the foothills and the mountains that like we had been like grinding our teeth on, highlining and climbing, and just like the conversation that we had in that moment and like what you were feeling.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there was a little bit of sadness, like we'd been pushing ourselves really hard for a couple weeks in one of the most amazing places in the world, probably one of the best places in the world to highline, and coming home, the rocks looked really small and the highlines were really small. And so I was a little sad, but honestly, like after you've built that Yosemite mindset, especially on the line, you can tackle a lot of highlines and they just go down quick. And really, I mean, it was just an excellent building block for me. And I don't know, what was your experience?
Yeah, in that moment, I remember just thinking like, man, these like mountains that we're climbing on look like freaking pebbles. And I think I said that to you. I was like, these look like boulders, man. Um, but yeah, like the weeks after that trip, like that like general feeling of just like being in Yosemite shape and like feeling unstoppable and just like really hungry for those like aesthetic high exposed high lines like really propelled my slackline journey. And like after that trip is when we started developing bigger and higher high lines. And like I don't know, I remember we had a conversation like we just hiked 4 miles up to Yosemite Falls. We're not hiking 4 miles into any of our highlines. Like imagine all the highlines that we're not seeing because we're not hiking 4 miles in. And it just gave us this whole new perspective of like there's highlines out there, and if you put in the work and hike 4 or 5 miles in, or do the climb, or like whatever it takes, you can make it happen. And like we got it done after that. We went on to rig some crazy high lines. We bolted a 100-meter high line in Estes Park that is, like, in my opinion, still absolutely legendary. We bolted a 100-meter high line off the Citadel in Poudre Canyon. It's like one of the best high lines in the Front Range, in my biased opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think after that trip, which was in 2015, and yes, that trip was, well, actually, it was post-breed. I think that trip was in October for us. Um, but it really it led to just a mindset of, hey, let's establish some really cool lines, and let's just not go for the low-hanging fruit anymore. And let's establish, let's be artists, and let's really put our minds to the test here. And I mean, it just only went up from there because, ultimately that creativity that was fostered in the Yosemite Valley is here with Breathe now, and the jelly. And so if anybody's familiar with the jelly net and the contraption that goes on over the pond, you can see some of that creativity at play. And that's kind of been Davis and I's role significantly over the past few years, is the slacklining at Breathe. And so a lot of the creativity and just that drive that we developed out there in the valley was able to really come into play and help us push the slackline scene at Breathe.
Margaret, oh wait, no, it wasn't Margaret. It was Dan's Seagirl asked, did the wind cause problems with the lines in Yosemite? We actually have a really good story that we meant to talk about. Dakota, give us the quick synopsis of wind and highlining in Yosemite.
Sure.
Because this is a crazy story.
Oh, yeah. So we had rigged the 250 over the Yosemite Falls, and we were just completely smoked. Like we walked it the next day, but then we ran out of food because we had been up there for a week, and we had to go back.
Alejandro ate all our food.
So we had to go back down to the valley to restock up on food. And when we did that, we had to sleep in Camp 4 that night because it was just too dark to go back up. And we woke up the next morning to this just sound that was like, and then like a clapping noise. And Davis and I look at each other in the tent. We're like, what is that noise? Because we both had heard that noise previously. And when wind picks up on high lines, sometimes the tapes can break. And especially if you got two pieces of webbing, especially if they're tensioned, they'll start doing this, and then they'll slap each other and make this crazy noise. And so here we are, 5 miles away from the high line, and we can literally hear that all the tapes had broke on the high line overnight, and the wind was roaring, and the main and the backup are slapping and just echoing through the valley. And we were frightened. But luckily, we had touched base with a couple of the other slackliners that were in the area, and they were heading up early that morning before we had even woken up. And so as we're packing our bags, getting ready to go up there, we look up. I don't know if we had binoculars, but we somehow saw Garrison, this 16-year-old at the time, crusher highliner that was sliding out onto the high line and taping the two lines together. And so by the time we got up there, everything was taped and ready to go, and we walk it again. Luckily, no damage had happened. But yes, the winds in Yosemite can definitely disrupt your highline session. So be careful out there.
Yeah, and that same wind got us caught in a freaking snowstorm at the top of that peak next to Austero Spire for 12 hours or something like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think there may have been a day or two where we were completely stuck in our tent, just eating food and hanging out with the magic pen, and that was it.
Cool.
Well,
good chat, D.
Yeah. And so for everybody that's been with us tonight. Thank you. I had some people come and go, but Breathe to most people has been a festival, and as we're looking forth, we know festivals have been a great
Sign off here. I got Dakota back in the call. Thanks for bearing with us. This is our first time doing this, so we're working out the kinks slowly but surely. Hey, good to see you. Long time no chat.
Sorry about that, everybody. We just had too good of a story, I guess.
Old rambling Randy's over here. Come on back in, fill back in. We're gonna say our final words and sign off. I was really feeling what Dakota was about to say too. It was like the most inopportune time to cut you off.
Oh my gosh. Well, we were just saying, Breathe has been a festival for many of us, and as we're looking forward, and as Breathe continues to grow, especially in these times, we're here for the community, and the Breathe Pulse is a way for all of you to keep engaged with each other and to keep this community going. And ultimately, this is an excellent way for this community to come together in a sustainable fashion. From how many parts of the world are we all tuning in live here tonight? So right there, it's just something amazing. And with these times, especially with kind of what everybody's going through, these moments can mean a lot. And tonight, it's just really a reminder how grateful I am for authentic friendships. And these friendships, they're built through what Breathe stands for at its core. And if you kind of enjoyed the
Well said, D. Thanks, everybody. We'll be signing off here. It sounds like we're going to have another Pulse next week, hosted by the lovely Krista. I might be spoiling a little bit of beans on that, but whatever. So come in next week, and we'll do this all again. And thank you for joining us. And this has personally been really fun. I hope it was fun for you guys. Thanks, D. Yeah, much love. Bye. Heart. It's a little hard if you can't tell. Bye, D. Bye, everybody. Love you. Say it back.